He was kind of embarrassed that my grandpa couldn't understand him, so my grandpa told me one day, just tell him I'm partially deaf. You're listening to Improv-ing Business on Web Talk Radio, where business and personal finances take a front row seat. I'm Brandon.
And this is Rick. Today we're going to be talking about Jack Lalanne and his lifelong swim in what we call the Blue Ocean. I recall back in the 1960s watching a black and white television set, and on that set was Jack Lalanne teaching all of our mothers how to exercise. But what Jack Lalanne didn't know is he was actually executing something that didn't exist until the 1990s that came out of Harvard called the Blue Ocean Strategy.
Stop! Look! Listen! It's time for the Jack Lalanne
But
Show.
before we
from
talk
Hollywood.
about the Blue Ocean
Starring
strategy,
the world-famous
let's
nutritionist
talk about this Jack Lalanne guy. Not everyone of my generation has heard of him. His full name was Francois Henry, somehow, quote, Jack Lalanne. Don't know how he got that in there. Jackanape, maybe, the French, term for a thug? No? Okay. He lived from September of 1914 to January of 2011. Long life. He was an American fitness, exercise, and nutritional expert and motivational speaker. Some people call him the godfather of fitness or the first fitness superhero.
Oh, did you ever talk like, so I'm going to make sure that you are able to get yourself into shape,
No, he says, you need to get into shape. That was my Superman impression, in case you didn't get that in the audience. Despite being a fitness superhero, Jack actually wasn't always very fit. He described himself as being a sugarholic and junk food junkie until he was 15. He also had behavioral problems, apparently, but turned his life around after listening to a public lecture about the benefits of good nutrition.
They had junk food in 1930. He was 15.
Yeah, they had all the, chips.
Cracker Jacks.
Cracker Jacks.
But you got the prize, though. You really got a prize. Today, you don't get much of a prize.
No, you get I don't even know, a piece of cardboard with a picture on it, I think. Back then, that would have been a big prize. Jack heard food pioneer Paul Bragg give a talk on health and nutrition, specifically focusing on the evils of meat and sugar, which nowadays there are differing opinions on certain amounts of meat. Sugar is still out, but back then it was meat and sugar were the big evils in nutrition. After learning about these various nutritional and exercise ideas, he opened the first ever fitness club in Oakland in 1936.
And we've all joined fitness clubs since then. It becomes just a big deal.
Yes, gyms are a big deal for everyone. I've been to a few. If you'll remember, for a birthday, Grandpa Joe and I, the portlier members of the family, got a personal trainer named Rocky. He was a lot of fun. He was a guy who looked like Mr. T, like he had the same haircut and everything, big burly guy. Kind of sounded like Mr. T too. He might have been a Mr. T impersonator, now that I didn't look back on it. And I would exercise with my grandpa, and he was a personal trainer and getting us fit. And he was from Chicago, not my grandfather, this Mr. T looked like. And he had an accent and kind of a gruff voice, and my grandpa couldn't understand him at all.
He's a really nice guy.
He was a wonderful trainer and a really nice guy. His voice, my grandpa just couldn't understand him. So
what was it? He was like,
hey Joe, you gotta lift, gotta do the things. He sounded a lot like Mr. T, but with like a slight Chicago accent. And so my grandpa was super embarrassed, and I could tell Rocky was this guy's name, if you can believe it. He was kind of embarrassed that my grandpa couldn't understand him, so my grandpa told me one day, just tell him I'm partially deaf. And so I did. I said, my grandpa's hard of hearing, if you tell me what you want me to tell him, I can relay it to him and he'll do it. So we sort of worked around this awkwardness he would say, you got to do 4 leg lifts, Joe. And then I'd go, Grandpa, you need to do 4 leg lifts. And it was fun while it lasted.
And your grandpa was excellent at looking like he understood when somebody was talking to him, but he didn't have a clue what they were saying. The story he used to tell me was that my grandfather, the Italian grandfather with the thick Italian accent, and he was first. This is my stepfather, of course. Your grandpa's my stepfather, dating my mother, and Grandpa would take him outside and talk to him about his Italian fountains and all these different things. And your grandfather, my future stepfather, had no clue what he said, but he wanted to say something intelligent, ask a question. So he tried really hard. And so when my grandfather was finished, he said, "So, Mr. Alfano, this, that, and the other thing," asked a question. And my grandfather went, "Damn you, boy. That's what I've been trying to tell you for the last 15 minutes.
He just couldn't tell. But anyway, back to Jack Lalanne. Not only did he start the first fitness club, or gym, as we call them now, he hosted a fitness television program called The Jack Lalanne Show, because back in the 50s, when it started, people just had shows that were their names instead of having any sort of clever title. And this show ran between 1953 and 1985.